Hello, welcome back to Strive doing some math. This is 4.8, the quadratic formula. If you don't remember the quadratic from the formula from Algebra 1, you should, but here it is. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now this comes from, you can use it on any quadratic formula in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. This is also known as standard form. Quadratic formula is used to find the roots, or the zeros, or also known as the x-intercepts. Discriminant is the stuff under the square root, b squared minus 4ac, and what that tells us is the number of solutions and what type of solutions. So let's try these example problems. So the first thing you gotta do when working with these equations is to rewrite them in standard form. And we do that in order to identify our a value, our b value, and our c value. And then once we have those, we just plug them in and solve. So here we go. Number 1. So for this first example problem, I'm going to write mine in a bigger space for me. So here's number 1. X squared equals 6x minus 4. So the first thing we have to do, rewrite it in standard form. I like to have my a value positive, so I'm going to move everything from the right side to the left. So you're going to get x squared minus 6x plus 4 equals 0. So my a value is 1, b value is negative 6, and my c value is 4. So let's do the quadratic formula. So negative b, so my b value is negative 6, so negative or opposite of negative 6 is positive 6 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 6 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 4, all over 2a, which a is positive 1. We'll clean that up in the next part. So when we simplify this, 6 plus or minus the square root, negative 6 squared is positive 36, minus 4 times 1 times 4, which is minus 16, all over 2 times 1, which is 2. Okay, from here we'll get 6 plus or minus square root of 20 divided by 2. So we can still simplify this further, if my pen will let me draw, by breaking down the square root or simplifying it. So we'll get 6 plus or minus the square root of 5 times the square root of 4 all over 2. So remember, 6 plus or minus square root of 4 is 2 times the square root of 5, all divided by 2. So remember, when we have 6 and we're adding or subtracting something and everything's being divided, we can divide each number, or divide each part. So I'm going to do 6 divided by 2, which is 3, plus or minus 2 divided by 2 is the square root of 5. And if you don't understand how I got there, I'll rewrite it a different way. So 6 is being divided by 2, and then we have plus or minus 2 root 5 divided by 2. These cancel. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and that's where we get this answer here. So x equals 3 plus the square root of 5, and x equals 3 minus the square root of 5. And that is our two solutions. All right, number 2. So number 2, we have to move around a little bit more. Move everything to the left, like normal. So I'll have 4x squared, and then when I subtract 2x over, negative 10 minus 2 is negative 12x. And then plus 9 equals 0. So my a value is positive 4, b value is negative 12, and c value is 9. Alright, quadratic formula. X equals negative b, so b is negative 12, so that's a positive 12, plus or minus the square root of negative 12 squared minus 4 times a, which is also 4, times c, which is 9. All over, not 2 times 1, but 2 times 4. I'm going to have 12 plus or minus the square root of 144 minus 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 9 is 144. All over 8. So would you look at that? 144 minus 144 is 0. So 12 plus or minus 0 over 8. So we have 12 plus 0 divided by 8, and 12 minus 0 divided by 8. So we'll get the same answer, which is 12 divided by 8. We can reduce that to 3 over 2. So our x equals 3/2. So this time, we didn't have 2 answers. We only had 1. Let's move on to the next example. So would you look at that, it's already in standard form for us. So a is 1, b is negative 6, c equals 10. So let's see how this goes. X equals opposite of b, which is positive 6, plus or minus the square root of negative 6 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 10. All over 2 times a, which is 2. So x equals 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 minus 40. All over 2. So that becomes x equals 6 plus or minus the square root of negative 4 divided by 2. So remember, from our imaginary section, we can change square root of negative 4 into the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 4. And from back then, we know that square root of negative 1 is equal to our imaginary number I. So 6 plus or minus I times the square root of 4, which is 2. So 2I divided by, 2 is equal to 3 plus or minus I. So in this case, we have 2 imaginary roots, or zeros, or x-intercepts. So what did we just find out? So our discriminant, also known as b squared minus 4ac, when that is bigger than 0, we have 2 real solutions, also known as 2 x-intercepts. So if I had a quadratic equation. My two intercepts would be here and here. If b squared minus 4ac is equal to 0, we get one real solution, and it's at, or also known as one x-intercept, and it's also the vertex. So your vertex is actually on the x-axis, whether it opens up or down. Your vertex is your one real solution there. And if b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, then we get two imaginary solutions. And believe it or not, your graph is going to look something like this, where you have U-shape going up this way, and a U-shape going down this way. Sorry, my pen is acting up. But let's do some example problems. So, as I pull up my eraser here, so for these example problems, all we have to do is find the number and type of roots for each quadratic. So we don't need to use the full quadratic formula. We're just using the discriminant, also known as b squared minus 4ac. So a, b, and c are still the same. A is in front of the x squared, b is in front of x, and c is c. So here we go. We have 10 squared minus 4 times 1 times 27. So we're going to get 100 minus 108. So that's going to give us d equals, our discriminant, negative 8. So that means no real solutions. We got two imaginary. So this, in number 2, b squared minus 4ac, once again, we'll get 10 squared minus 4 times 1 times 25. So we have 100 minus 100. So d equals 0. That means we get one real root, and it's at the vertex. And then lastly, for this last problem, we have 10 squared minus 4 times 1 times 23. So I have 100 minus 92. So we have d equals 8. That means we have two real roots, because our d is greater than 0. D is equal to 0, we have one real root. And if d equals negative 8, we have two imaginary. So, one more thing about this section is we're going to have some word problems using quadratics, and our favorite type of problem that we like to use is the projectile motion. This little equation here, where we have y equals negative 16t squared plus v naught of t plus h of naught. The negative 16 in this equation is acceleration due to gravity. Now, some of you might have already taken physics, and and were wondering, isn't that supposed to be negative 9.8? So remember, negative 9.8 is in meters. But we're going to use feet to make our lives a little bit easier. I mean, most experience you're going to use meters, but for for our purposes, using 16 is going to be easier than using 9.8. Our v naught, or v sub o, however we want to call it, v sub 0, is our initial velocity. So that's the speed and the direction of which the object is going, usually feet per second, or if you're using meters per second. And then h of naught is our initial height of the object in question. Okay. And okay, we'll just cut that out. So h of naught is our initial height of the object when launched, or thrown, or jump off, however these problems go. So let's do an example problem. So whenever you read these word problems, usually you want to underline all the numbers. But first thing you got to do is just read the problem. Basketball player passes the ball to a teammate. The ball leaves the player's hand at 5 feet above the ground and has an initial velocity of 55 feet per second. The teammate catches the ball when it returns to a height of 3 feet. How long is the ball in the air? So I have already done it, but we've underlined all the numbers. And now we got to figure out what we're looking for. It's found in the last sentence there, is how long is the ball in the air? So how long means time. So we're looking for t. And it's nice to label all the other variables that we have. So v sub naught, our initial velocity is 55 feet per second. Our initial height is, so the ball leaves the player's hand at 5 feet. And then when it returns to, teammate catches the ball with a height of 3 feet. So this is actually your y value. Because we want to know how long the ball stays in the air. So we're going to plug this into our formula up there. 3, our y, equals negative 16t squared plus v sub naught, which is 55t plus 5. I'm going to move 3 over to the other side. And what do you know? It's a quadratic equation. So we're going to use our handy-dandy quadratic formula, where a is negative 16, b is 55, and c, in this case, is positive 2. So here you go. T equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times negative 16. Uh-oh. My pen's starting to fail me. Here, I'll rewrite it over here. So this is negative 4 times 16. Yeah, let's just pause it. Oh, actually, let's just start over. So we have t equals the square root of, or t equals, sure. So we have t equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a, which is negative 16, times c, which is 2. All divided by 2 times negative 16. time to put in your calculator. Make sure you do inside the square root first. In this case, we're going to get 2 real roots because it looks positive to me. So you're going to do negative 55 plus whatever this number is in your calculator, and then divide by 2 times negative 16. So you're going to do negative 55 plus this big number divided by negative 32. And then you're going to do negative 55 minus this number divided by negative 32. And you'll get t is around negative 0.04 seconds, or t is 3.47 seconds. Now, we got 2 answers, but obviously one of them doesn't make sense in context of the problem. T equals negative 0.04 seconds. That means his teammate caught the ball negative 0.04 seconds before he even threw it. So this answer doesn't actually work. So our final answer is D is about 3.47 seconds. That's how long the ball traveled through the air. That's a long pass. And that is it for today on quadratic formula.